Today on an all-new Dr. Phil. Eerie new details about the Idaho murder suspect. I do get a sense this is a game to him.
The game he believed he was winning.
His interaction with law enforcement. Seems like he's answering questions that aren't asked, he's deflecting. What crime experts are saying about the DNA.
The car is a rolling crime scene.
You think he left that sheath on purpose?
It could have just been a calling card.
Now that the arrest has been made and we've learned more, what's the most significant thing that's jumped out at you as you've learned more about this?
Well, for me, Dr. Phil, I think when the affidavit came out, I was absolutely shocked with how rich in information it was. We don't normally see something like this, and particularly as it went to DNA. You know, they talk about the button clip that's on this sheath that was left behind, that was found obviously in the bed adjacent to the victims. And that's probably going to arise, that identification is going to arise from what's referred to as touch DNA.
Now, this is very much like what was found there.
Right.
And the button that we're talking about is this one right here.
Yes, it is.
Which you have to, snap and get out. And contact DNA was found on this button right here.
Yeah, and so what you're looking at, just think about, okay, let me kind of break this down. You're talking about touch DNA, which for all of us, if you have dry skin, you slough dead skin cells all of the time. And so in this particular case, he would have left potentially several elements that they could identify there, these dead skin cells. And you only find a partial strand of DNA in that. But they did find something there that tied directly back to him. And the fact that it was in such close proximity to the bodies might even be an indication as a starting point to when all of this happened. And so this is very powerful information. And it's not necessary that we have the knife at this point, because the knife actually could leave behind more evidence. One of the things that we do at autopsy, at examination, is we do full body x-rays. Okay, just let that sink in just for a second. We do full body x-rays. So this knife, allegedly, has been used repeatedly, 4 times. Okay, let's just think about that. The structural integrity of this thing begins to wear down. It'll chip. It'll chip. Sometimes points break off. I've seen this any number of times at autopsy. If that is the case, they may very well have recovered a metal fragment from the blade of that knife within the body. And if that is the case as well, you can do metallurgical analysis on that. And the reason that's important is you can tie it back to a specific manufacturer. Just because the sheath was found there doesn't mean that that's the knife that was carried. So you look for a specific forensic tie back relative to the chemical structure of the blade as well. That might be a potential here in this case.
Mercedes, it has not been confirmed, but I think they stopped him twice on the way, which is pretty unlikely just randomly. It seems to me it's very likely that that was a coordinated effort to check on this car, check on what was going on. And when I look at this in lie behavior, it seems like he's answering questions that aren't asked, he's deflecting.
Yep.
That's not responsive.
Right.
That whole thing felt wrong to me. What's your take on that?
It's so true, Dr. Phil. The first thing I noticed is how wide-eyed he was. He doesn't want to engage with the officer. It's obviously very clear. And he keeps going up in sort of this tilt, and he starts correcting his father when his father starts talking about, well, I think there was a shooting, someone was shot. He's correcting his father. He just wants to get out of there. There was almost, you can see that his affect was, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to continue this exchange. I just want to continue driving.
Yeah, put yourself in, as hard as it might be, put yourself in the position of knowing you've just committed 4 brutal murders, and you look in your rearview mirror and you see lights.
Sure.
And you're being pulled over. It's like, whoa.
Yes.
So you're going to be, your heart's going to be beating 300 beats a minute, and then somebody comes up and they start asking questions, and you notice they didn't ask for insurance, they didn't ask for car registration, they didn't issue a warning, they just wanted to chat him up a little bit, eyeball him, see if his father was under duress or anything, who was in the car with him, and then, okay, don't do that again, so long.
Jonathan and I talked about this just a little while ago. We think that they may have been attempting to see if he was going to bolt,
Yeah.
to see if he was going to, put the accelerator to the floor and just take off. And, twice like this so quickly.
I also find, and this isn't uncommon for the Bureau to follow people for long periods of time. I wouldn't doubt there was many other things going on that they knew who he was and were trying to check some things out with him. But one of the things I found very interesting in that circumstance was I felt like the father was more nervous than the son at that point, which going right along with, I've been going through and pouring through your series, Fill in the Blanks. When you talk about Machiavellian narcissism and psychopaths, and when I watch him, I think he's already starting to display the signs of somebody who's playing the game. He's being satiated again by this game, and that's kind of what I saw there. I didn't see him as nervous as I did see him trying to think his way through something, and his father you can see the difference in somebody there that is truly nervous. His father was truly nervous.
I saw annoyance too. There's one point where he's clearly not answering the question that is asked. Where are you going? I'm going to get Thai food. You know that's not what this officer is asking. He is asking where you are going, not just for Thai food. And his dad keeps saying, we're from Washington State University, and then we're heading to Pennsylvania. And there is a split second where he says that, and Kohberger looks down, and he does that is what I zeroed in on. The point that the student that we just heard made about him always wanting to be seen as the smartest person in the room is a common thread with a lot of people that we've spoken to who know or knew Bryan Kohberger. There's this idea that he needs to push his intelligence, and we even saw a little bit of that in that interaction with his father. As you said, he corrected his dad when his dad said something that wasn't necessarily true, but didn't matter. He didn't have to correct his dad. It had nothing to do with anything. So the idea of this intelligence and him being the smartest person in the room is something that we keep seeing. This alleged killer is the person they are looking for. It clearly led to mistakes because he left DNA.
Well,
the killer saw someone in the house. There definitely seems mistakes in that he probably thought he knew better.
But let me point something out here that worries me, because everybody's talked about the fact that the behavior suggests this was premeditated.
Sure.
That this wasn't just an impulse thing, that he saw one of the four and followed them home and did this on impulse, that it was premeditated. And then mistake-wise, he left the sheath at the scene of the crime. Big mistake. There was a footprint at the scene. Right. He brings his own car to the crime scene, did not dispose of the car. His phone pings 12 times, suggesting stalking around the house. He turns it off. The crimes are committed. Then the phone comes back on. These are really stupid mistakes. And I'm wondering if the defense here is going to be to flip the script and say, come on, this guy's trained in criminology. He's brilliant. Right. He's in a PhD program. Do you really think he doesn't have sense enough to leave his phone at home if he's going to do that? Do you think he would set up an electronic trail of stalking around the house with 12 pings, then turn his phone off, do the crime, then turn it back on right afterwards? It's like he's pointing fingers at himself. He's not that dumb. I'm afraid they're going to use the mistakes that they're indicting him with as a defense, saying this is not something they would do, and flip the script. And you only have to get one juror to have reasonable doubt. You get one juror with oppositional defiant disorder that goes against the rest of the jury, and this guy walks out with a hung jury. That's why I say this is not over.
You're so right, Dr. Phil. The greatest vulnerabilities to the prosecution of this killer, if he is in fact the killer, is going to be the collection of evidence and his profile as a person. So the fact that he is so educated, has this great degree, how weird is that you're going to have a mass killer who's actually getting a PhD in criminology? It doesn't fit the bill.
Let's take a look at the survey that Bryan Kohberger created and put up on Reddit to have criminals respond to. The first question, did you struggle or fight the victim? How did you travel and enter the location that the crime occurred? How did you leave the scene? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. After committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? What was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings at this point. Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target? That is, the person or object. Please detail your thoughts and feelings.
Here's what the prosecution's going to use. They're going to use that survey against him. If you match up that survey against that affidavit, it's mind-blowing. The very first question he asked in that survey, where he's trying to ask about the emotions that people are feeling when they're committing crimes, is how did you target your victims? Well, you go back to the affidavit and they go back to the 12 pingings of his phone in and around that place. Well, if he's getting information from criminals on how they successfully committed these crimes, that very first step is something that he's already done. The second step, well, what did you do in preparation for the crime? Well, if he's in fact the killer, obviously he's only a suspect, he turns the phone off. We know that in the affidavit, it says that phone turned off for the duration of the time that he allegedly traveled to the home, committed the crimes, and then only until he was back on the highway did the phone go back on. So all these steps that he asked these criminals in the survey, he seems to have duplicated in the affidavit, according to law enforcement. And frankly, so if that's the case, if this is a successful prosecution, what are we looking at? A sick social experiment?
I think part of it is he's wanting to live vicariously through it, and part of it is he's wanting to know what to expect because I don't have normal emotions, and I don't want to panic. I need to know what to expect, what to think. That's odd.
Well, it's
He's
all,
asking odd questions.
The word
all his
goal stands out to
goals.
me too.
Yeah.
How did you achieve your goal? I have goals. We all have goals. They're positive things. They're not crimes for the most part. So the fact that he is talking to criminals about their crimes and describing them as goals definitely struck me as odd, and that the person who's writing that question finds crime to be something to aspire to.
Yeah, and his criminology professor says, these are typical questions. These are things that you ask, but in the context and timing in which he does them, I don't believe in coincidence.
No.
Well, and also when it comes to the absence of evidence is often proof that in somewhat of guilt, because when he turned his cell phone off, when he turned it back on, those are the absence of the cell phone, but you still have the videotape of the car is actually proof that he was structuring his behavior in a way as not to get caught.
He just thought he was smarter than everybody else.
He
I
did.
think that's where it flows from. That he
He
would not.
left
he
the
would
sheath, but we have no knife. And the biggest thing, he held onto this car. And my contention is with the car, the car is a rolling crime scene, Doc.
We're talking to Bryan Entin, who is there on the ground, has talked to family members, and has also spoken to Prosecutor Bill Thompson. Can you tell us what he says in your conversations with him? How confident are they? Do they have a prosecution plan, and do they have a lot more than they've revealed so far?
I can tell you this. I mean, we were hard on the police for a long time, and so were the families and the people here in this community, because there was no information leaking out throughout the entire investigation. Basically, everyone on the outside thought that they knew nothing. And so there is this feeling of redemption, I think, amongst law enforcement here, because it turns out they knew a lot from the very early stages and were working very, very hard behind the scenes. And according to most people, had a very, very solid case. But at this point, the gag order is now in effect, so they've stopped all communication with the families, with the public, and with the media too.
Is it your sense that they are confident in their case?
Yes, I think they're very confident. They've got the DNA link from the snap on the knife sheath. And I was in Pennsylvania when the arrest went down. One of the first things they did when they got Kohberger into custody is they did another direct DNA swab on him. We don't know the results of that. We'll hopefully find out at the next hearing, but likely they're going to try to connect him directly through DNA, not just through ancestral.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.